doing this for over 30 years now. It is a frightening time, and listening to the Lieutenant General right before me, it's even more scary than during the Cold War when we had an enemy that I think we understood. But the American public is really gaining a perspective right now where it's widely reported how insecure they are about the economy, but they're really insecure about their national security now. And when we did this national survey last month, we released it, and you can go, anyone wants to find out more information or more questions that are not in these slides, which there is plenty of, they can go to the website secureamericanow.org, and you can get these data. But when we got the results of this, we put together a presentation where it says it's not just the economy anymore. It's really about national security. And as case in point, we just had those two special elections this past September 13th in Nevada and in New York 9, the New York 9th Congressional District. Security was definitely an issue there, particularly on the heels of the 10th anniversary of 9/11. So going through these slides, the next slide, you can see the methodology. It's 1,000 likely general election voters, people who intend to vote for president, and it has a plus or minus 3%. That means that 19 times out of 20, when we do this poll, the survey numbers will be within 3%. Many of these numbers are well outside that. Next slide, slide 3. You can see there, when we ask just simply, how important are issues of national security to you when deciding your vote for president? 96% said important. 67% very important. I mean, this is a huge number. Americans can pay attention to the economy and national security at the same time, and they want that reported. The next slide. And again, a stunning number. Which country is the greatest threat to the United States? And we gave them choices. They were allowed to list others. But you can see there on the third column over when it says combined first and second choice, you've got Iran at 63%. The American people get that. China, who's supposed to be our great trading partner, 50%, ranking ahead of North Korea. So really, Iran, China, North Korea. Russia has gone way down. Venezuela is not really a threat, but we've got serious threats. Who's the next slide? Which country is the most trusted and dependable ally to the United States? When we gave them these choices and allowed for others, you can see that Great Britain, without a doubt, was the overwhelming first choice, but Israel also scored there. And you've got England, 84% in the combined, and you've got Israel, 46%, followed by Germany and France. And what's scary about that is, except for Israel, England's cutting back its military. And it's got to be a great concern there. Slide 6, the next slide. And this is, again, well beyond the margin of error of the survey. Do you think Obama's policies towards Iran will succeed in convincing them to abandon developing nuclear weapons? 78%, nearly 4 in 5 Americans, said no. They don't see this president succeeding. I know he's at the UN today, and I know they're all talking about this, but it's scary. The American public is way ahead of our leader, where for the past well over a year, they've been looking at this and saying it's not working. They're developing nuclear weapons. Then what if they get them? Slide 7, next slide. If Iran attains nuclear weapons, do you believe Iran would use them to attack Israel? 76% of the American public said yes. The next slide. Slide 8. If Iran attains nuclear weapons, do you believe Iran would use them to attack the United States military bases and ships in the Persian Gulf and Middle East? 70%, 7 out of 10 Americans believe they will attack us in the Persian Gulf and use their nuclear weapons as a shielding. Slide 9. If Iran attains nuclear weapons, do you believe Iran would arm terrorists who would use the nuclear weapons to attack the United States? 80%, 4 in 5 Americans said yes. It's in our pop culture, it's in our movies, it's in our books, it's in our TV. American public believes that if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, they are going to give it to terrorists who will use it against the United States. For those of us who are older, like Frank, who remember the Cold War, it was always mutually assured destruction. It was some sort of deterrent. American public opinion does not see that deterrent right now with Iran. And therefore, you have the next slide, slide 10. If sanctions against Iran do not work, Would you approve or disapprove of using the military to attack and destroy facilities in Iran which are necessary to produce a nuclear weapon? 64% of all Americans of this survey of 1,000 likely voters, and again, there's a demographic page at the end, and more Democrats than Republicans in the sample is representative of national electorate. 64% actually approve right now. Only 23% disapprove and 39% strongly approve. So while America's pulling back out of Iraq and out of Afghanistan, we just listened to the experts tell us how they're getting ready to gut the military. The American public is extremely afraid about Iran. They don't want to have nuclear weapons, and they would be willing to expend military capital and take military action to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. And as you can see from the top line there, the bar there, the level of approval is the highest that we've ever polled at over the last 2 years. Next slide, slide 11. Regarding China, do you think America can rely on China as a strong economic partner who wants the United States to be safe and secure? Or do you think China is actively trying to undermine the United States to advance its own economic and national interests? 71 to 18, they see China as undermining our economic and national interests. Next slide. When we gave them choices about this administration's policies towards China, whether they were successful in dealing with China, only 22% said yes. 26% said they're totally ignoring the threats by China militarily and economically. And 41% see this administration as compromising American security and economic interests when dealing with China. Next slide. Regarding their cyber attacks on the United States, it's gotten a lot of press recently. Do they think the United States needs to do more to be far more aggressive to stop computer and internet hacking by China? Or do you think they've handled it correctly? 19% say handled it correctly, 66% say we need to do more. Next slide, slide 14. Do they think President Obama's outreach to the Muslim world has increased or decreased the security of the United States? They say decreased, 47 to 30. Next slide. Regarding the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, would you say President Obama favors Israel or favors the Palestinians? They see him favoring the Palestinians 36 to 21, and only 21% said he treats them equally. Next slide, another big number. Do you agree or disagree with the position that before the Palestinians are given their own country, they must first recognize Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state? 82% of all Americans agree with that statement. Only 7% disagree, and 63% strongly agree. And that's a pretty significant number considering what's going on at the UN right now. Next slide, 17. Do you think the protests in the Arab world known as the Arab Spring will ultimately be a good thing or a bad thing for the United States? In spite of all the media coverage, some of the hoopla about this, 39% of the Americans think it's a bad thing, only 20% see it as a good thing. Slide 18. When we asked them straight up, do you have a favorable or unfavorable opinion of the Muslim Brotherhood? And I didn't know what we would get. We never asked this before, and I have seen this week other media pollsters ask this. We got 9 out of 10 Americans had heard the term Muslim Brotherhood, so Americans are engaged. And of their opinion of it, it was 44 unfavorable, only 10% favorable. So they already see this organization as a bad guy and as a threat to the United States. Slide 19. How concerned are you about Islamic terrorism by American-born Muslims? 86% concerned, 45% very concerned. And finally, slide 20. Recently, Congressman King, who is chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, launched congressional hearings into the radicalization of Muslims in the United States. Regarding these hearings, would you say that they need to continue because they are providing information which is valuable and important to stop terrorism in the United States? 63% agreed with that. Or should Congress stop these hearings because they are offensive to Muslims and are a waste of tax dollars? Only 20% said stop. 63 to 20, they said Congressman King's hearing should continue. With that, the last slide is just a voter profile, but to sum it up, Frank, the American public is extremely insecure about security right now. And the way I described the effect in this, we just had a recent election, only a third of the voters happen to be Jewish, and they certainly were concerned about Israel. But almost half, 44%, were ethnic Catholic. and they were overwhelmingly Democrats, 60 to 20, and they responded both to economic messages and to security messages. And it was like a 1-2 punch against the administration and their current policies right now. We are not at all secure about the economy. We are not all secure about where we are in terms of homeland security, in terms of national security. And we have for the first time since the end of the Cold War, as I said last time I spoke to one of your groups, Frank, we have real external threats that the American public sees, has a clear fix on, and does not feel at all good about where we are or about where the policies are taking us. And it's certainly when you intersect these public opinions with the information you just heard about gutting our national military, it's a very bad mix right now compared to where we are right now. So with that, Frank, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this group. And you can, again, go to the website, which is secureamericanow.org. You can see this data, you can see other data, you can see lots of other information precisely on these subjects, and would certainly be very useful in the issue advocacy that you've got to make so that we can get some common sense solutions in Washington so that we can strengthen our national security, not so insecure right now.
John, thank you very much. Can I just ask a quick question just to make sure I've got the last slide right? It seemed as though you really went to great lengths in those 1,000 voters to try to reflect as accurately as you could the demographics of the population at large, though you were focusing on the voters, which is obviously a subset of that population. Is that about right?
Right. They are absolutely. When you look at the last page, which is the profile page, you can see there that we had there were Democrats at 38%, Republicans at 34%, which is typical of a 2008 election. Democrats had a slight edge. There was only we did ask a question that was related because of some of these Middle East issues. Only 3% of the voters were Jewish. We asked them if they had any relatives in their household who happened to be Jewish or related to somebody who was Jewish or an ancestor was Jewish. It went up to 11, that's all it was. You had 10% African American, you had 8% Hispanic, which is very close to the census when you head into don't know, because you get some mixed race there. So, and the model geographically was based on the 2008 presidential election where you had that kind of a turnout. So, of the Protestant voters, they were 53%. Half of them, 52%, were born again evangelical Christians, which would make Ralph happy.
Okay.
But 29% were Catholic. So it really fits with the model and the profile of a presidential election. And the other part is the order of the questions is actually on the website the way we asked it in the top-line computer printout. And the reason we did that is precisely because people that don't like the results of what we're getting often argue that there's something wrong with the poll. We put it out there, it's fully out there, the wording of the questions are out there, the order of the questions is out there, because there's a lot of politically correct spin. Like, for example, with Congressman King, a lot of people are pressuring him at those hearings. And what was amazing to the congressman, who, as you know, I also do his campaign polling, I have for 20 years, the public backs him up 63 to 20. I mean, Washington is a city that's surrounded on four sides by reality. And this is reality.
John